The courtroom was already full by the time the bailiff called the room to order, a low murmur of voices fading into uneasy silence as everyone rose to their feet. Wooden benches creaked beneath shifting bodies, coats brushed against one another, and the smell of old paper and floor polish hung in the air. At the front of the room, beneath the state seal and the softly humming fluorescent lights, Judge Frank Caprio took his seat. His movements were measured, almost gentle, as if he were aware of how intimidating the space could be to those who stood before him. He adjusted his glasses, glanced over the docket, and nodded to the clerk. Another day of traffic violations, minor offenses, and human stories disguised as case numbers. When the young woman's name was called, it barely registered at first. She rose slowly from the back bench, her movements hesitant, as if her legs weren't entirely sure they would hold her weight. She couldn't have been more than 22 or 23, her shoulders narrow beneath a thin gray sweater that looked one wash away from falling apart. Her hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail, strands already escaping to frame a pale face marked by exhaustion. She clutched a folder to her chest like a shield as she walked toward the defendant's table, eyes fixed on the floor. Judge Caprio watched her carefully, the way he watched everyone. But something about her posture made him lean forward slightly. She stood there, small in the vastness of the courtroom, hands trembling as she tried to organize the papers she had brought. The charge itself was minor unpaid parking ticket that had escalated after months of neglect, but experience had taught him that the size of a violation often had little to do with the weight it carried in someone's life. "Good morning," he said softly, his voice carrying easily through the room without ever needing to rise. "How are you today?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. Her lips trembled. For a moment, it looked as though she might manage a polite response, something brief and rehearsed. Instead, her eyes filled with tears so suddenly it startled even her. She inhaled sharply, tried to swallow it back, and failed. She began, and that was all it took. Her shoulders collapsed inward as if something inside her had finally given way. Tears spilled down her cheeks, unchecked, her breath breaking into shallow gasps that echoed painfully in the quiet room. She covered her mouth with one hand, mortified, while the other tightened around the folder until her knuckles went white. A ripple of discomfort passed through the spectators. Some looked away, others leaned forward, unsure whether they were witnessing something private they shouldn't be seeing. Judge Caprio raised a hand, gently, not in authority, but in reassurance. "It's okay," he said. "Take your time. You're safe here." The words were simple, but they landed with weight. She tried to speak again, shaking her head as if apologizing for the inconvenience of her emotions. Her breathing hitched, and she pressed the heels of her palms into her eyes, smearing mascara she hadn't realized was there. The clerk shifted uncomfortably. The bailiff glanced toward the judge, waiting for direction. Judge Caprio stood. It wasn't something he did often, and the movement drew immediate attention. He stepped down from the bench, slowly, deliberately, and walked around the desk toward her. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. When he reached her, he stopped a respectful distance away, his hands folded loosely in front of him. "You don't need to be embarrassed," he said, quietly. "Court can be overwhelming. Life can be overwhelming. Why don't you tell me what's going on?" She looked up at him then, really looked, as if only now realizing she was speaking to a person and not just a judge. Her eyes were red and glassy, but there was something else there. To relief, maybe, or disbelief. "I swear I didn't." He nodded, encouraging her to continue. "My name is Alina," she said, her voice unsteady, but gaining strength with each word. I'm working 2 jobs right now. One during the day at a grocery store, and one at night cleaning offices. I don't have a car anymore, so I take the bus. But that ticket," her voice cracked again. "I parked near the hospital when my mom was sick. I thought I paid it. I really did." She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Then my mom died, and everything just fell apart. I moved apartments. I missed letters. I didn't know it turned into this." The room was silent again, but this time it felt different. The tension had softened into something heavier, more human. Judge Caprio listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable but kind. When she finished, he waited a moment before speaking, letting her words settle. "How old are you, Alina?" he asked. 23, she said. "And your mother, how long ago did she pass?" 8 months, she replied. "It still feels like yesterday." He nodded slowly. "I'm very sorry for your loss." Those words, spoken without ceremony, undid her all over again. She nodded, biting her lip, tears falling silently, now instead of in sobs. "You know," Judge Caprio said gently, "when someone comes into my courtroom, I don't just see a case number. I see a person, and people come with stories. Some of them are heavy." He glanced at the file, then closed it. "This ticket," he continued, "is not about someone trying to break the law or disrespect the system. It's about someone who was taking care of her mother, grieving, trying to survive." Alina stared at him, unsure if she had heard correctly. "The law exists to serve people," he said, "not to crush them when they're already down." He returned to the bench, sat, and addressed the clerk. "What's the total balance on this case?" The clerk checked the screen. "Including late fees and penalties, Your Honor, it's $450,000. $412. Alina flinched. $400 might as well have been 4,000. Judge Caprio looked back at her. Lena, if I ordered you to pay this today, what would that mean for you? She hesitated, then answered honestly. It would mean I wouldn't make rent this month. A murmur spread through the courtroom. Judge Caprio nodded once, as if the answer confirmed something he already knew. That's not justice, he said simply. He turned to the clerk again. The court is dismissing this case. All fines and penalties are waived. For a second, no one reacted. The words seemed too big, too sudden. Dismissed. Alina repeated, barely above a whisper. Yes, he said. Dismissed. Her knees buckled, and she grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. A sound escaped her that was half laugh, half sob. She pressed both hands to her face, overwhelmed, shaking with relief. Thank you, she said. Thank you so much. Judge Caprio raised a finger gently. There's one thing I want you to promise me. She nodded quickly. Anything. Keep going, he said. You're doing the best you can under very hard circumstances. Don't let one chapter define your whole story. She met his eyes, really met them this time, and nodded again. I won't. As she turned to leave, the courtroom broke into spontaneous applause. Something technically discouraged, but utterly impossible to stop. Judge Caprio allowed it for a moment, then gently brought the room back to order. Alina walked out of the courtroom lighter than she had walked in. The weight she had been carrying for months finally lifted. Outside, she leaned against the wall, closed her eyes, and let herself cry not from fear or shame, this time, but from gratitude. Inside the courtroom, the next case was called. Another name, another story waiting to be heard. Judge Caprio adjusted his glasses again, ready to listen, knowing that sometimes the most powerful thing a judge could do wasn't to punish, but to understand. And for everyone who had witnessed that moment, it was a reminder that compassion, when paired with justice, could change a life forever.